This is the Gridiron Guesser, the premier guesser in all of sports.
Hey, welcome into another fantastic episode of the Gridiron Guesser. Make sure you subscribe and like this video and turn on those notifications. You're not going to want to miss out this college football season. Now let's get into it today and let's tell you who's going to win the Big 12 in 2023. Let's start off by looking at the teams that are not going to win the Big 12 in 2023. You know, there's just so much crazy stuff going on at Iowa State with the gambling issues and loss of quarterbacks, etc. Kansas had a pretty good season last year by Kansas standards. Can they continue that this year? We'll see, but not enough to win the Big 12. West Virginia is probably going to be awful. Cincinnati has to totally reload after losing their head coach Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. BYU, not really sure what we think of BYU at this point, other than they're not going to be competitive enough to win the Big 12 this year. And then you've got Houston. Houston's not going to be very good either. Of these teams, we think UCF might be the one who could be competitive. Gus Malzahn usually does a terrific job, sometimes outperforms expectations. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Orlando this year with UCF. All right, let's go ahead and get started on our top teams that have a chance to compete for the Big 12 Conference Championship this season. Now, our first two teams here could technically finish in a tie, but because they do play head-to-head and we're going to pick one to beat the other, obviously, on the field, we don't really consider that a tie. We only consider ties when you have three or more teams that finish with the same record. Number 7, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Are we really seeing this correctly? The Cowboys somehow avoid Texas, TCU, and Texas Tech this season, but get Iowa State, Kansas, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, all teams that many think are going to have losing seasons in 2023? With Mike Gundy entering his 19th season at Oklahoma State, we think the schedule is soft enough that the Cowboys find their way into the conference mix, whether they're really any good or not. The Cowboys do return 13 starters from last season and have a new defensive coordinator in Brian Nardo that should help to strengthen that side of the ball. Expect OSU to be up and down on both sides of the ball as they look to replace much of their offensive production from 2022. And they must also make some personnel changes on defense in the new system. Overall, we expect the Cowboys to have a winning season and pull an upset or two along the way. The schedule is just too weak for the Cowboys not to take advantage of it this season. We're calling for a 5-4 record in the Big 12, and we'll also take the over of 6.5 regular season wins for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Number 6, the Oklahoma Sooners. So what do we think of the Sooners after Brent Venables' first year at Oklahoma? It was definitely an underwhelming 6-7 season in Norman. The defense was pretty much atrocious, giving up 30 points a game and over 450 total yards. The offense was okay, but they were slowed down in their big games against Texas and TCU, among some others. This year, the Sooners should be on solid ground offensively with Dylan Gabriel back at quarterback and several experienced running backs around him. Defensively, there's really nowhere to go but up, right? I mean, come on. 6 starters returned from last year's rather poor unit, but should be better in Venables' second season. They will need to find replacements to fill the holes left at defensive line, linebacker, and secondary. But the Sooners were able to land some nice additions out of the transfer portal at all 3 of those spots, and that should help improve their defense this season. So can the Sooners compete with Texas for the Big 12 title in their last season in the conference? No. We see improvement this season, but not enough to be a real contender. Look for the Sooners to finish 5-4 in conference play, and we'll also take the under of 9.5 total wins on the regular season. Next up, the Gridiron Guesser predicts a 3-way tie for third place in the conference between Baylor, TCU, and Kansas State. Number 3, the Baylor Bears. Baylor came into 2022 as a top 10 preseason pick. That quickly faded with a 3-3 start. The Bears returned 12 starters from last year's team, including quarterback Blake Shapen, running back Richard Reese, and receiver Monterey Baldwin. They should be more efficient on offense. Defensively, they returned a significant amount of their sack production on defense from a group that gave up almost 27 points per game. Dave Aranda enters his 4th season at Baylor, and the expectations are to bring Baylor back to the level of play we saw 2 seasons ago in 2021. The schedule is challenging, although Texas and Texas Tech have to come to Waco. But the Bears also have to travel to Kansas State and TCU late in the season in back-to-back weeks. We think the Bears will have improved numbers on both sides of the ball this season, but the Big 12 is that much more challenging this season with more teams in the mix to contend for the title. The Gridiron Guesser has the Bears going 6-3 in the Big 12 this season, and we'll take the over of 7 total regular season wins for Baylor. Number 3, the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU had a magical season in 2022. That ended with a curb stomping by Georgia in the national championship game. And that's a good thing the Horned Frogs got brought back down to reality in January, because that's where they're going to be during the 2023 season. Look, TCU will be good. They'll be in the mix to play for the conference title, but they won't be great like 2022. TCU must replace too many starters on offense as well as offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. New offensive coordinator Kendall Briles is fine, but we don't expect TCU's offense to match last year's nearly 39 points per game. Defensively, TCU will still be strong as they are very skilled at the positions of linebacker and in the secondary. They have tough games at Kansas State and Texas Tech, as well as home matchup with Texas. TCU will be good, but not great. The Gridiron Guesser sees TCU finishing with a 6-3 mark in the Big 12, and we'll take the over of 7.5 total regular season wins for the Horned Frogs. Number 3, the Kansas State Wildcats. Can the Wildcats continue to build off of last season's 10-4 campaign under head coach Chris Kleinman? With the running back Deuce Vaughn gone on offense, the Gridiron Guesser thinks it's going to be tough for the Wildcats to match last year's win total. And with only 5 starters back on defense from a group that allowed about 22 points per game in the crazy Big 12, even more pressure will be on Will Howard and the offense to score points. We like what Chris Kleinman has built so far at Kansas State, and we think he'll continue building the program up. But this season may not show it in the win column. We've got the Wildcats finishing 6-3 in the Big 12, and we'll also take the under of 8.5 total wins. Number 2, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. The Red Raiders basically return everyone on offense from a unit that averaged over 34 points per game and 400 in total 60 yards last season. Can Texas Tech really be good enough to contend for the Big 12 title? We think so, but it's going to come down to whether or not the Red Raiders can replace some key losses on the defensive side of the ball and improve a defense that allowed 29 points per game and 426 yards per game in 2022. It is the Big 12, so it's not like they have to field an all-world defense to be competitive. But those numbers need to improve if Texas Tech ever wants to be a serious championship-level contender. We think they do this season, enough to give the Red Raiders a shot at the title. The Gridiron Guesser is taking a chance here, but we like the Red Raiders to finish 7-2 in the Big 12, and we will take the over of 7.5 total wins on the regular season. Number 1, the Texas Longhorns. Is Texas finally back? Really this time? Are they really back? Will they be able to overcome shot after shot this season from scorned Big 12 teams that try to take them down before they exit the conference for the SEC? We think Texas is good enough to withstand some big-time haymakers and win their final trip around the Big 12. Texas is loaded on offense with 10 starters back, including quarterback Quinn Ewers and receiver Xavier Worthy. Both offense and defensive lines should be much stronger than they've been in years past, and we think this team is primed for a big year. Look for Texas to score more points this season than a year ago, while also being able to be very stingy on the defensive side. The Gridiron Guesser has Texas finishing 8-1 in the Big 12, and will also take the over of 9.5 total regular season wins for the Texas Longhorns. So there you have it. There are top 7 teams in the Big 12 for the 2023 season. Thanks for joining us on the Gridiron Guesser. And don't forget to check out our other conference predictions and tune in each week as we give you the most accurate guesses on all of the biggest games. So you don't want to miss out. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and turn on those notifications. We'll see you next time on the Gridiron Guesser.